Come and join the party. These books are for you, you and everybody. Is it like yours? Cause these books are for us and everybody, yeah. Open your mind and take a look. Let's open up a book with Greek. Come and join the party. These books are for you, you and everybody. Is it like yours? Cause these books are for us and everybody, yeah. Open your mind and take a look. Let's open up a book with Greek.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to These Books Are For Everybody. I am your host, Cree Miles. This is a place where we work to make lit, good lit, emphasis on good lit, accessible and exciting because, as we say, much like these hoes, these books are for everybody. We are, of course, talking about a book today, but we have decided to bring in the author of the book. An author is a person who writes the book. I'm being an asshole, but if you all do actually watch Zeus, I don't know if, I'm trying to make the entry point solid for you guys. But anyway, we are talking to Rob Franklin about his beautiful, stunning, dazzling debut, Great Black Hope. Rob, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Cree, and for the kind words about the book.
For sure. So I always want to ask first, like a mindful, how are you doing right now in this moment?
Ooh, let's see. Let's check in with myself. I'm doing well. I just went for a run. It's extremely hot out in New York. So I'm now in the cool of my apartment. I'm feeling comfortable, and I'm excited to chat.
Are you a distance runner?
Yeah, kind of. I'm not like a marathoner. I mean, okay. I have been running since high school. I ran cross country and track in high school. And
what was your track event?
I ran the 100 and the 400, but I wasn't that good, so don't ask me my times. I'm sure you were really good.
I'm not going to ask you your time, but I do say the 400 is the physically hardest feat of any sport.
I agree. I it's between the 400 and the 800 for me on which is the hardest event.
Yeah.
The 800 so you can almost sprint the whole thing or go full out the whole time.
Oh my god.
Versus I don't know. I both of them are kind of, I think those are the two most difficult events.
I 100% I agree. I coach track and okay. I just turned 35, so I registered as a master. So I've been training 200s, but I have always been terrified of the 400 my entire running career. So period. And I'm glad that you're out running. I try to do distance, but I'm just like, what is this plotting shit I'm doing? This is childish, you know?
No, you really can feel super, super duper silly. I think it's on days when I'm not really feeling it and I'm kind of just slowly trotting, trotting along Eastern Parkway. I do feel a bit silly, but I feel like I always feel much more lucid and clear-headed after, so.
That's true. Okay, that's real. So enough about running. Can you please can you just give us the elevator pitch of what Great Black Hope is about?
Absolutely. So Great Black Hope follows a Black queer 20-something named Smith, who in the wake of an arrest for cocaine possession in the Hamptons must confront his relationship to race, class, addiction, and grief in the dizzying aftermath of his best friend's mysterious death. That's my kind of run-on sentence elevator pitch.
That's perfect. And that encapsulated it all perfectly. Rob, I do have to tell you, this year I was on the hunt for the debut of the year because I feel like last year, Martyr Cave just swept, you know. So I've been reading all these debuts and it's you, dude. I really and I don't give a fuck what happens award season. You're either going to win or get robbed because I have read them all and It's not, it's the sentences. No one else, I feel like nobody else is really, okay, no. There are a couple people who had some strong syntax, but then I'm just like, where, this plot is falling. You kept it. It was, oh, it's so good, dude. It's so good.
So kind. Thank you.
Oh no, I'm just being for real. And I can also say, I'm going to cut this, but I work in publishing, and so I have to push just like a lot of bullshit sometimes.
Yeah,
so it's just really, it's exciting to be excited. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. I absolutely hear that.
Okay, so I'm always curious because I know that you went to writing school, so I'm sure you've written a lot of stories about a lot of different things. Did you know that this was going to be your debut, or is this like just the cream that rose to the top, or do you have like a list of things you're going to do, you know?
Yeah, so I had actually been working on a different novel when I kind of pivoted to focus on Great Black Hope. So I'd been writing this novel set in Berlin that's a kind of like, I mean, it's a lot of things, but it's sort of a satire of the kind of like techno tourist scene. And it's a first person novel told from the perspective of like a white, gay, sort of like Connecticut born guy who then like moves to Berlin, kind of falls in with these like Trustafarian like expats.
Okay.
And so like I had been working on that for a couple of years and actually moved to Berlin to work on it sort of like full-ish time and finished a draft of that manuscript, and then went to grad school. So I moved back to New York to do my MFA at NYU. Okay. And that first semester I was like workshopping the Berlin book. And I was kind of just like, I was looking around at just like what was getting published as well as just what people were writing in my cohort. And I was like, I really like this Berlin book, work in progress novel, but it kind of felt like somebody else could have written it. And in fact, there were people in that program who were writing kind of similar stuff.
Okay.
Who were trying to write the kind of like great Berlin youth culture novel.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I really want my debut to be something that feels like only I could write it. And like I had this idea really just like stemming from this character Smith who, like me, lived this life split between the kind of Southern Black bourgeoisie world of his parents and the kind of like downtown New York club scene, and looking at all of this sort of like tensions between those worlds, and him as this sort of like he's always, I think, on the other side of a kind of like invisible but impermeable membrane, like looking at these worlds like against the glass.
Yeah.
And I really liked that as a kind of like stance or like pose for the protagonists as like a way in to look at all these different worlds.
Oh, that's so... I have questions about Smith's belonging later, but I want to talk about cocaine. Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Because I do like, I don't know if this is my algorithm playing with me, but like there was this status on Facebook that like people chopped it up, turned it into a meme, and it said something akin to, I don't care how fun the party is, if you pull out some cocaine, I'm going to scream. And also like maybe sometimes you don't get invited to the party because you don't do coke. Yeah, that was and I'm just, I really love, like, I loved this book because I do feel like cocaine is a really good like measure of like a Black person, especially middle-class Blackness, proximity to whiteness in some ways. Totally. And because like the only all Black space where people are snorting cocaine is like a Hollywood Hills party. Like you're not going to be in, like, I grew up in the Midwest, which is just like basically the South because of the Great Migration. Like when you get into Black spaces, and I didn't see cocaine at the Black parties. I saw cocaine at like when there were a few white kids around. But I know that you did grow up in the South in Georgia, so I was wondering if that's just me projecting, or if that is like, is that what you've witnessed around the use of that drug?
No, I think that's totally accurate to my experience, and I love what you said there, and thinking about cocaine as this. Not quite a cipher, I don't have the right word, but this way to like, it's like interpreted so differently, and it has this kind of like symbolic import that is about, as you said, like proximity to wealth and proximity to whiteness. And like, obviously then that gets so into like the history of the war on drugs and like cocaine in other forms, and
Yes.
disparate sentencing practices and all sorts of things. But I do think I never saw people talking about well, actually, I guess the first time I ever saw cocaine was in my prom limo. There was someone,
and everybody was black?
No, everyone was I was the only black person in the prom limo.
Oh, then for sure you saw some cocaine at your prom.
And
that tracks.
I went to a very kind of old, genteel South, white, conservative prep school. And I was totally scandalized the first time I saw it. And then, in college started to see it more. And then certainly when I moved to New York, in the kind of that downtown nightclub scene, it's as common as drinking, basically. Right. And thinking about that drug and how use of it was kind of interpreted in that space versus in my parents' world, where it's that's so scandalizing still.
Oh my God. Yeah. I too grew up, I was raised by some black respectability boomers, and when they found out, my brother lives in New York, he's a bassist, and I've been around the way. So when we casually talked about cocaine, you would have thought that they were and they're pulling us into rooms are you okay? And we're telling you something that happened 4 years ago. It was just an impassing. So, oh my gosh. And honestly, that on top of Smith and Carolyn together, because I went to 2% black high school. Okay. Yeah. So we are very much in the minority, and there are children, I went through the whole district. And so there are kids, white children, that I have known and been friends with since I was 5 years old, but there's just still this impenetrable thing that we just can't cross quite because of our races. And even when everything else is kind of on equal footing, where we live and what our parents do, it's still just it's not quite safe. And I felt that super vividly with Smith and Carolyn, because Smith loves Carolyn, but still there just would occasionally be resentment, or this isn't landing because she doesn't when he went to that meeting and she was it's gonna be great, it's gonna be fine, and he's no, it was almost can you just talk about forming that relationship?
Totally. Yeah. I was definitely, when I was kind of crafting that relationship, I was thinking a lot about White Girls by Hilton Als, which is a book I really, really love. Yeah. And I think a book that captures something that I wanted to be present in the Smith-Carolyn relationship, which is that Smith in some ways is kind of enamored by the sort of white femininity and white glamour that she embodies. He really likes that she is his kind of passport into these ultra elite spaces that even as a kind of well-to-do black man would still be closed off to him. Mm-hmm. She's in this cafe society of New York born and European kind of art world aristocracy type figures. Yeah. And he likes that his proximity to her allows him access into those spaces, but he also resents that because it means that his presence in those rooms is conditional. Mm-hmm. And so there's always this kind of push-pull between them. And as you said, I think it's undergirded by actually quite a deep love between them. And one of the things I wanted to explore in this book that I think feels pretty contemporary is how we can in these intimate relationships across kind of identity lines, we're often reaching across a distance. We're reaching across a kind of gulf of understanding and experience, and trying to get the other person to understand what it is to be us. Yes. And recognize continually kind of failing in that project. Yeah. But if you love a person, it is worth the continual trying and failing. And I think in this novel, we, without giving anything away, I think there's a real question if their relationship is going to kind of survive the strain of all these external circumstances. And survive the strain of the kind of, yeah, like gulf between their lives and their sort of like quote unquote lived experiences.
Yeah.
But I do think like the deep well of love that is there between them, allows that relationship to kind of persevere.
You know, when you talk about working to be seen,
Mm.
obviously we see that a lot through Smith because this is his story. But I can't think of the word. It's like a Japanese word where you're around people and you realize they've lived all
Oh
these
yeah.
days. You know what I'm talking about? And so I try to give people that benefit of the doubt when I'm dealing with them. But then also, like, if I were to deal with a Carolyn, I would be like, but you are just privileged and white. Like, I mean, like, I don't even know how interesting it can be. Like, how many layers are there actually, you know? So, like,
Hmm.
as you talk about people working to be seen, you think that's a universal experience that we all, and some of us are just more dismissive because of where we like fall in the oppression Olympics,
Sure.
or you know.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to explore precisely that also,
Yeah.
like in the Carolyn character. I mean, I was really interested in how um, she might also feel kind of confined or trapped by identity and by like performance of identity,
Yeah.
where like
Yeah.
we see this towards the end of the book, a very frank conversation between Smith and Carolyn, where we realize that a lot of the same, yeah, like pressures to perform oneself and like how identity can become a kind of prison, like
Yeah.
she feels some of that as well, and like it does in some ways kind of like flatten her complexity and humanity to be seen, in this kind of almost archetypal way, even by Smith,
Yeah.
one of the people who's closest to her. And so, I mean, I do think like as a writer, I'm only going to try to write like at least a main character that has a sort of, that I think has layers of like depth and interiority. Otherwise, like, I'm not going to want to spend years with that
Right. Right. For
character.
sure. For sure.
But yeah, I was really interested in how like she externally immediately could present as like a type of person we've seen before.
Definitely.
She's a kind of, in a prior version of the book,
Yeah.
literally there was a kind of essayistic passage that like dissected her appeal to Smith and how she like mirrored all these characters from like Daisy Buchanan to Serena van der Woodsen to Jessica
Yes.
Johansson from Girls, that like he was kind of enamored with, at
Yeah.
various times. Like she recalls them in this way that like, he's totally fascinated by. I also think that there's like a kind of like gay man woman thing happening where like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes gay men will be like, there's a kind of like gay misogyny that can happen where it's kind of like this like pretty girl's my Barbie doll.
Yeah. For sure. Oh, I love that.
That I think is also like at play in their relationship. But then, yeah, like seeing how that is a kind of confining force in her life as well.
Okay. No, that's totally fair. And yeah, you got me with Serena van der Woodsen. Because, yeah, she had me hemmed up so bad as a teenager. And I've never felt like any type of way in my identity. But then I was walking around like, am I trying to cosplay as this white girl? Like, that's crazy. No, I
It's hard
totally.
not to.
It's hot. She's so good. But
Yeah,
actually, I
she's so
loved
glad.
Blair too. Because I liked
Yeah,
how mean she was. I like mean people.
totally.
I really you kept the theme of like drug use and
Mm,
like its relation to socioeconomic placement and race so front and center, and yet did not beat us over the head with it. Like
thank
I
you.
was like, obviously he's in these like recovery meetings, and that was doable because he's in a meeting with a bunch of people. Then when he meets his like second group of friends, and Mina,
Yeah, Mona. Yeah, and
Mona,
Tia. Yeah.
and so we have that one scene in the subway with
Mm,
the unhoused person, and then also they're in the park, and just like I would be reading like, oh, this is terrible. And I'm like, oh, right, this is what we're talking about. That it was so good without feeling like YA, like, you know, like it has to be that straight. Do you have any idea how you did that, or did you just do it?
I mean, that's such a good question. Well, because you bring up like the O, Mona, and Tia characters who really only like, you know, kind of show up in the third act of the novel. It's interesting, like, there were discussions really with my agents about like whether those characters would remain in the book at various points, because it's kind of like, you know, we have for basically the first two acts, we have a pretty set cast of characters. And then in this third section, we're introduced to these new ones, as well as kind of to new spaces. And I think the reason why I sort of fought for those scenes to remain and like reworked them until they felt like they kind of like could fit into the universe of the novel is I really wanted in the third act for like the novel's scope to like kind of like open up a little bit. So like for us to not just be looking at how drug use and sort of like addiction or being perceived as an addict, being labeled as an addict affects people in this kind of like glamorous like downtown elite world.
Yeah.
But like widening that conversation to look at like larger narratives of addiction and like, you know, in that park scene, Smith is considering the kind of like next frontier of the war on drugs, like amid the opiate crisis, and like changing narratives around empathy for people who are battling like substance use disorders. But also like who that empathy is extended to and who that empathy is not extended to.
Yeah.
And like all of the kind of subtle markers that are like helping show culturally who we think is like deserving of that kind of, that compassion.
Yeah.
And so I was interested in having those characters like expand his sort of world, and broaden that conversation in the third act. And I also think, I hope at least, that it like keeps it, that is part of what keeps it from growing stale.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's like we're looking at the same kind of thematic concern in the first section. I think like, you know, it's really centered on kind of Smith's experience being funneled through the kind of like for-profit recovery industrial complex. Perfect. I sometimes refer to it as.
That's perfect.
And like the kind of, you know, New York City nightlife world. In the second act, he goes back to Atlanta, and we see that subject kind of filtered through, as I said, like the Southern Black bourgeoisie world, as well as like through kind of like Black scholarship. Like he is kind of thinking about like capital N narrative. And like reading these books and sort of like considering these ideas in the context of his life. And in the third section, we're looking at characters kind of beyond the sort of like downtown nightlife world, people who are sort of publicly understood as like addicts, and like discarded by a system that has like, for the most part, despite giving Smith challenges, still is like able to accommodate him. And so like, I think because it's filtered through these different like prisms in the three sections, like hopefully it doesn't grow stale.
No, it was, and you reminded me that his grandmother was it was so beautiful. That was so good. I couldn't think of a good question to ask around, I'll try it out. So like I loved him growing up in the South, in the Black bourgeoisie. And then like that, those are the roots of Smith. But then he goes out to try and make his own life out East, and just how inevitably you have to keep those lives separate because of who he was raised by and what the expectations are. Like when he comes home, he has to go to church and like perform the minister's child, like, you know.
Sure.
I guess I'm wondering, like, do you think, I know that all people of all different backgrounds have to like go and forge a path outside of their parents, but does it have to be kept so severely separate in the way that I think it does when you're raised by like Black middle class boomer, because that every single Black child I know, I have a child I'm in community with right now who is a
Yeah.
sophomore at Yale, and the stuff he's doing,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
like, like it's just,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I was thinking about that as I was reading the second section.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think for people who like, are like traversing different like kind of social spaces, or like are trying to define a self outside of the context of their parents, often like the impulse is to keep those worlds completely separate, because it's like you kind of know to a degree that your parents wouldn't like totally approve of the sort of like the new day to day, but also they like wouldn't really understand it. And like Smith, in some ways, like he benefits from the fact that like his background's kind of opaque to the people that he's around. Like they don't have a ton of context for him.
Right.
And so like he can have a sort of like a kind of like exotic flair that like reads as cool.
Yeah.
Where like, if he had the kind of like New York crew, like the Carolins and the Fernandas, like come stay with his parents in Atlanta, like it's that's almost unimaginable, right?
It's
like,
unimaginable. But I could kind of see him staying at Carolyn's place.
Well, for sure. And in the opening we don't get a lot of scenes with it, but like we see
that's where he's leaving, right? Yeah. Yes.
Like he has had a kind of lifetime of training in like being a sort of chameleon and like existing in those spaces in a way that's still like palatable and doesn't like harsh the vibe.
Yes.
He knows how to be at like the Hamptons like art collector party and not bring up the topic that brings like conversation to a screeching halt.
Yes.
Even when it's kind of like, maybe that is the conversation that needs to be had.
Yes.
Versus like, of course, like wealthy white folks like often have like no reason, have never entered into a kind of like majority Black space. And certainly like the world, the kind of like Black bourgeoisie, which is like very insular and like not, we don't even really see it in pop culture. Like it's a world that you're not gonna like passively consume that much.
Right.
So they don't know the rules of it. And so it would be kind of like, it really would be, like a Martian landing on Earth to bring kind of those folks back to Atlanta.
Because when you're in the space, when you're the Black person in the space, and everyone's like, oh, it's so great that you're here, and you talk about this in the book, this has upped our credibility. But of course we are working to make the space safe for you too, but obviously they always do a kind of shitty job. How do you maintain your like, I am being real, like I'm being true to myself, I'm being down, while also like, I always think about that. You're in a space as the Black person, that they're on bullshit, and you like, I want to ascribe to my June Jordans, right? But I'm also just like, that's fucking scary. So like, I respected that Smith did, like, I respected his like, his insecurity around things and just wanting to get through, because also I recognize that he's young. So I'm like, you are young, so you don't know. But like, when are we supposed to start cussing people out?
I love that question. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like the way I navigate that is pretty different from Smith, because I think Smith is still in a stage where he's like, I mean, I think there's literally there's like a sentence in the third section where he self-perceives that somebody else is interpreting him as a quote unquote like spineless striver willing to dance when told. Like, he's like really willing to kind of play the game, like to be allowed to remain in these rooms, I think. And like we see that sort of like constant performance is like bending him to the point of breaking.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I think it's like, a lot of us, I can speak for myself. Like, I definitely went through a long period of being like, navigating that in like a really kind of like uncertain, insecure way. And like, I mean, I remember this, I don't know why this example just occurred to me, but
Okay.
I remember, not to get too personal, but like right when I moved to the city, I dated this white dude, just like a few dates, who was like, who was like, by all accounts, like a good guy, smart guy, whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I just remember this conversation where, I mean, he was always wanting to basically like talk to me about like race politics.
Yes.
And at the time, I think when I was like kind of like 22, 21, like I didn't know how, it's like he would bring up these topics that I actually did have a lot of thoughts on and had like done quite a bit of reading on.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to kind of like, within a sort of romantic context, like engage in those conversations in a way that wasn't going to like give rise to a lot of resentment and like discomfort.
Yes.
And so I kind of just like shut them down in this way that like made it seem like I like was not interested in talking about that. And like that would be, I think, like also very much Smith's impulse. Like he would kind of quietly seethe instead of like figuring out, a kind of a more unapologetic self where he like just exists. He just sort of exists, and he like, if people want to remain in his life, then they do, and if they don't, then they can go. Like, and I think it took me a lot of time to get to, the place that I would say I'm at now, where like, still, I'm sure there are plenty of times when someone says something, and I kind of am like giving a look, maybe to the other Black person at the table instead of saying something, because I'm just like, is it worth me like cussing this person out? But I feel like I've over time gotten a lot more comfortable with just confrontation and with like, with even just like asking someone enough questions that they realize that I think they're an idiot.
Yes. I'm working on it right now.
Yeah. Being like, okay, so like when you say this, like what exactly does that mean?
Yes. Bring it back.
I do think is a powerful tool, like really like holding up a mirror to a person.
Oh my God.
But yeah, like I think that is a kind of, that's a process for many of us.
And you think like when you see Smith in 6 years, you think he's going to be the one who's like, oh, this is so racist. But then he's just going to go home and be like, oh, that was racist. He's not going to be the one who like stops the meeting.
I don't know, because I do think like we see him, in the end of the book, we see him kind of entering into community with people who are like, I think will
interrupt.
In a much more active way, are having these discussions, and are also, having discussions around like how class privilege like exists within the Black community and like within kind of Black artist and like activist spaces. I do think he's like coming into more of a kind of like political consciousness by like the end of the novel. So, I mean, I would hope that like in the future, the Smith character, is relinquishing some of this sort of like willingness to like sanitize himself in order to be like quote unquote accepted. And I think he's really, it's interesting with like the Smith character, of course, like biographically, I have a lot in common with him. So people definitely like interpret him as like, a version of my psyche. But I also was kind of thinking of the O character as like another side of my psyche in a way.
Love that.
And like, and like Smith being so rooted in like history, memory, nostalgia, family expectations. Like he's a very like past oriented character. And like O is a very future oriented character. And like, I think O's approach to identity and to like fluidity, never letting someone kind of like trap them in a label. Or like letting it become a sort of like confining force in their life. Like Smith is really drawn to that.
Yeah, they're so brave. It's so interesting.
Yeah. And so like those being these sort of like dueling aspects of like my psyche, but also like maybe representing a kind of like future path for the Smith character.
Yeah, I feel that. Okay, this was the question at the top of my mind as I was reading through the book. I have thoughts, but do you think Smith is an addict?
I love that you asked this question because I do think in some interviews they're just like, and he's an addict.
What? No.
I'm like, I don't think the book says that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like one of the central questions of the book is like, is he an addict? And like, also, what is an addict?
What is an addict?
Yeah, and like recognizing that it like it means a different thing when applied to Smith than it does when applied to Carolyn, who self-identifies as an addict.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I think my view, and I'm very curious what you think from reading, but I think that Smith exists on like a spectrum of like dependency, but I think that he is not as far as Carolyn is. Like, I think he probably is a character who like can have a drink and like not end up on the floor, which I think like often in our sort of, public narrative of addiction, it's like, it is the kind of like 12-step paradigm, which of course like is really works for a lot of people, like not disparaging it at all, but it's a kind of definition that doesn't work for people who are in a kind of in-between space where like substance use can often lead to trouble for them, does cause them to like act in ways that they otherwise wouldn't and like don't want to. Like I think that there are a ton of people who exist in this kind of like in-between space who like will never enter recovery because they don't identify with that like paradigm or that kind of like taxonomy of the addict. And so I think it's like Smith over time, I think like that is a question that he continues to contend with. And like, I was really interested in how like, because he's forced into this like carceral framework where like, there's no room for gray, there's no room for nuance. At all.
Yes.
He's having to kind of like prematurely like define himself either as that or like not as that. Instead of like over time, like questioning his relationship to drug use, to partying, to sex, all of these things, like he's still kind of figuring it out, but he's being forced to kind of define as something because of the situation he finds himself in.
Yeah, because he got picked up.
Yeah.
And there was no room for, it was just very binary. Like, the way that was demonstrated in the book is like, okay, he got pinched for this. I hate that phrase. I couldn't think of another one though. And so now he is a drug addict. And I was like, that's not, I've seen drug addicts. This is not giving, but yeah. And then as he was like sitting in the meetings and he's just going through the formalities of getting through, I was like, yeah, our system sucks. And this is not helping this man at all.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm curious, what did you think?
Definitely don't think he's an addict. Like, not yet. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if because he got picked up so early or got caught so early, and because of like the space that he is in, I do think he is kind of a coward, and I do think he is definitely the type to like play by the rules. Yeah. Because he got picked up at this moment, that he's not gonna get picked up again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
But like, if he would have kept like a downward slope, maybe a year and a half from now, there was no way he could have passed a drug test while he was like in recovery, because he would have been too far gone. Like Carolyn, and I feel like it got dark for Elle a few times too. So no, I don't think he's that guy. I don't think he's that guy. Okay, you guys, we're going to take a quick break for the word of the week, and then we will be back to continue our conversation with Rob Franklin. And we're back. Okay, Rob, so I don't want to be that guy, because this is your debut and it just came out. But as I feel like you can tell, I am a fan. So I am going to read everything you write, even if the rest of the things that you write are not good. I'm just going to keep, that whole like, oh, the grape was sweet, so I kept eating grapes to try,
Yeah.
Are you working on anything of this novel that you just brought up? Like, is that coming? Like, what's
So yeah, okay. So Berlin book is with my agents,
okay?
and
Okay.
we'll see kind of what they think about it. What's the thing about the Berlin book? First of all, it's like on this whole promo tour, I've just been like dragging its name through the mud, sadly, where I'm like, oh, and then I have this other book, and I just kind of discarded it.
Whatever.
But I do think it's like, there is a lot of writing in that book that I love, and like.
Okay.
I haven't actually reread it in full in like 5 years. And so
Okay.
I think like if we decide to kind of pursue that, I probably will significantly rework like a lot of it.
Okay.
But there's the potential that will happen. Separately, I have started working on something new that I'm really excited about. And
this is so fun!
Yeah, I'm really stoked. It's like, I won't say too much about it, but it's a novel like set in the tech world. And like, I think one of the central like topics I'm kind of interested in is transhumanism. So like using technology to artificially extend life or like externalize consciousness, like in the machine.
Yes.
And like, I'm really interested in the fact that I feel like myself and my close friends, like the way that we sort of contend with mortality is through like art making or indulgence in like sex and partying or like trying to start a family to like, have a legacy. And it's very interesting to me that the way a lot of people in the tech world and specifically some of the most powerful people alive are contending with mortality is by trying to like eradicate death altogether, but also like extending life, but making it so like neutered and sanitized that it's kind of like what is worth living about this?
Right.
Like
you're just like in a machine.
Yeah, right, totally. Or even just like the kind of, even if in the version of like let's all live till we're 130, but like you can only drink like Soylent, like blended nutrients, and like
God, this
and like
is
never
where
take
I'm
a
going.
risk and like whatever. It's just like, okay, like that sounds like such a kind of artless way of existing in the world to me that I would never want that. But I'm very intrigued by the psyche of someone who does.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, and I've also just noticed myself these kind of like seedy like underworld of the tech world stories. Like, did you hear about the crypto kidnapping that happened in New York?
Was it recent or like a while ago?
It was a couple months ago.
No, tell me about this.
It's one of those stories that as soon as I heard it, it just like kind of started shimmering for me in this way where it was like, okay, like I'm not necessarily going to write about exactly that, but like something that like approaches the same themes.
Yeah.
Basically, okay, and I may, butcher certain details, but essentially there's a kind of crypto multimillionaire, scion who comes over, I think from like Belgium or something.
Okay.
He comes to New York and he at first willingly goes to meet these other crypto, I think, millionaires based in New York, these very kind of like straight-laced white dude crypto guys who are renting a townhouse in New York for $30,000 a month. So like a wildly expensive, very fancy townhouse. And he disappears. And it turns out they basically hold him hostage for weeks and torture him and try to get him to give up his crypto key so that they can steal from him. And then there's all these other kind of like weird sort of details that I won't get into, but like it's very interesting. And then eventually he manages somehow to escape, stumbles out and tells a crossing guard, like, help, and is saved. Now these men have been arrested and I guess are awaiting trial. But the fact that they thought that they were going to get away with it, it's such like a bizarrely brazen thing that was kind of happening in plain sight, like in a very densely populated part of New York. I think they were in like the West Village. And the kind of like this sort of lack of concern for humanity being representative of this like larger tech ethos
Yes.
is very interesting to me. And so, yeah, like I can feel myself being really intrigued by stories like that, which
Yeah.
usually feels like the start of like, okay, I want to spend the next like 3 years thinking about this.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
I love. I have so many. I need to pull this. I didn't prep any of this, but I have do you see, you can't see my tabs. Oh God.
I
There's
can't see
so
them.
many tabs. You can't see them at all. And there's so many. God, why is the light
But I
doing?
believe you.
You know what? After we're off the phone, I'm going to send a picture because
Please do.
the way that you describe people, like how you get in and then pull it apart, is so. I think that's what a lot of people can't do that they want to be able to do. So yes, to hear you spend time trying to figure out what type of person, one, thinks they would be able to get away with that, two, would want to get away with it in the first place, and then three, would have the audacity to try to execute it. I'm locked in on all levels of that. That's super exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it should be fun to work on.
Okay, we're gonna end with a speed round. They're very random questions. Okay,
Great.
this is just all based on vibe. And then the last question is not a speed question. You can take your time answering it. But okay, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Whitney Houston or Mariah Carey?
Whitney Houston.
Okay, East Coast or West Coast?
East Coast.
Okay, East Coast. I knew you were going to say that because I put East Coast next. East Coast or down south?
East Coast.
Okay, Baldwin or Morrison?
Baldwin.
Brandon Taylor or Kaveh Akbar?
Kaveh.
Prince or Bowie?
Ooh, Bowie.
Okay, Bowie or Michael Jackson?
Bowie.
Okay. That threw me off. I knew for sure you were gonna say.
I'm like, he's not gonna comfort me in the comments, but
this is so good. Okay, so we'll put the Jacksons against each other. Michael or Janet?
Ooh. Honestly, I'm probably listening more to Janet than Michael.
Honestly, there's something about her discography right now that is speaking to the time. I don't know.
Obviously both can like dance their asses off.
Yeah.
But it's like I kind of love just like the sexiness of Janet Jackson, like and of just like her sound. But obviously, both icons.
Oh no, I am a diehard Michael fan, but there's like a resurgence of Janet love that's been happening the last few months. So yeah. I feel you. My last question is, what is your favorite thing about being a Black human?
I mean, I honestly think it's like it is getting to consume the art of other Black artists and being like getting that feeling, which I got, for instance, like when I was watching Sinners, which I loved overall, but specifically like I know it was kind of polarizing, but that scene did you see it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like the scene in the kind of juke joint, the like trans historical scene where we're seeing like, we're seeing like the B-boys and then like the girl like twerking in the kitchen, like appear into this landscape. I got full body chills, and I remember having the thought like, wow, I'm so lucky to be Black. And I will often have that when I'm like reading or watching something by another Black maker of things, like where I'm like, just like the kind of access to a kind of like cultural history and like a sensibility that is like so rich can send me into a state of like absolute bliss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Rob, thank you so much for talking to me today. Everyone, thank you for listening and hanging out. If you all have not already picked up Great Black Hope, you have to pick it up. One, because it is good. Two, because you will be smarter. There are so many vocabulary words in this book that I just was like, I do not know these words. Three, the sentences are beautiful. They're pull apart type. You need captions. You've got captions. Do you see what I'm saying? But thank you all so much for hanging out. I am Cree Miles. These books are for everybody. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye. Okay, I'm going to stop.